That's International Women's Day, ladies and gentlemen. And Rosie, the Riveter. Whoa, that ever hurt. She's got a punch. But no, actually, International Women's Day is a very important commemoration, and Rosie is indicative of a long, difficult journey that women had through the suffrage movement right up until recent years, and still now are struggling to achieve parity and equality in many things.
That is true. And I just appreciate this. So this was actually, I got a text from my mother who told me, you need to bring this with you to the show. She bought this over at Pulp 716 over in North Tonawanda, the comic shop.
Cool.
Because in addition to comics and everything, it's really cool. I have a finger puppet of... Actually, I have a few. I'm trying to think of the one specifically. No, our dear Vice President, Kamala Harris.
Oh.
I have a little stuffed finger puppet of Kamala Harris. That is a really. Have you ever been to Pulp 716?
No, I gotta go now.
Yeah, so they have. It's weird because they make boba tea and historically accurate coffee. But they're also a comic book shop. Their main thing is they're a comic book shop. But they have all of these like really cool things. And this was, my mother saw this and just had to get it because it's Rosie the Riveter as a punching puppet.
You know what we'll have to do next week? We'll have to play the video on YouTube from the gentleman who used to play Tesla when I played Augustus Porter. And he had a finger puppet of Tesla and a finger puppet of Edison. And he would have Tiny Tesla. Hello, I'm Tiny Tesla. And he would do shows from like over top of the Sholkop. So that thing is really cool. I like that. But
yeah, they do. They have the tiny. They do have a tiny Tesla. They don't have Edison, but they do have Tesla over at Pulp 716 as well.
They are cute too. They were fun.
They are.
Oh, I love it. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Nico back.
I'm back. It's been 2 weeks.
Yeah, we missed you, but we did have Sarah in last week, and she was a bright and shiny replacement for you, and not a replacement for you because certainly no one can replace you, and because we've tried. And
yeah,
Amazon can't
three
get
easy payments of $29.95.
Yeah, but they can't get it to us in time.
That's
So
so you have to get Prime.
well, I have Prime. Do you have Prime?
Of course I have.
Amazon Prime. There you go.
Optimus Prime.
But hey, welcome back. And I know you went. I got this awesome hat from Florida.
Yes.
So I'm wearing it because it matches my color scheme of wearing red as a Canadian color. And since most of the Canadian population is in Florida at this time and throughout the winter, it's true. They call them snowbirds.
They do.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But it's funny. Yes, as you can tell by my very deep tan. I spent a week in sunny Orlando, Florida. It's actually right back here is, this would be, where are we, Peter? Do you know what this is? You know what
Hogwarts.
this is. Yes, it is.
Yes.
So this is Hogwarts, which is part of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Studios, where I
sorting hat
spent
over
the
there.
week. Yes. Yes, somehow the sorting hat has magically appeared. Do you know your house?
Yes, Gryffindor.
Same.
Ah.
We're Griffith. That makes so much sense now. See?
All right.
Yes. But yes, I spent a week at with my mother, my wonderful mother. Hence the Rosie the Riveter thing too. We've been spending lots of quality time. But we went to Universal and I spent a day over at Magic Kingdom and Disney. And the one thing I noticed is it is very, very, very busy down in Orlando, Florida.
That's where people want to be.
It's also, it's 90 degrees. It reminded me of like August here in the falls. But it's funny because, what it was really showing is travel is back up. Like, it was just as busy there as it was pre-pandemic. And here in the falls, there are signs of a rapidly approaching tourism season.
Actually, I had a client today on one of our tours, and she's here in Buffalo with her husband for not just to represent their company at the tours. They're what would you call it, a resort in South Carolina and several properties. And she said that they came to the show, they had to sell 55 packages to break even for the cost of doing the show. And the Buffalo Home Show is what she's at. And it was taking place last weekend and this weekend coming. And apparently in their first weekend, they needed to sell 55 through the entire run of 2 weekends. And they already sold 70 in the first weekend. People want to travel.
Yes, they do. That has become very clear. And it's interesting because last time I went to Orlando was 2020. It was actually February of 2020. Everything shut down like 3 weeks after I came back. So it's like I got it under the wire there. But it was really interesting because when I came back, there's an entire new terminal at the Orlando airport, Terminal C. It's all the international flights and JetBlue.
So Orlando takes international flights in, does it?
Yes, they do.
I did not know that.
Yes,
Okay.
so Orlando takes international flights, and that section was all international flights and layovers. I spent a lot of quality time at that airport. Orlando wanted to keep me when I returned earlier this week.
Yes.
It's supposed to be a 9 p.m. flight due to a series of random events, including an ice storm here in Buffalo. That flight left Orlando at 2:30, and I was going to bed.
AM?
Yep, 2:30 in the morning. 2:30 in the morning. And I made it back here in the Falls at about 6 a.m., 6:30 in the morning. The sun was coming up as I was going to bed. It is not something I ever want to repeat. But it was a fun time, and it was fun to be down there. And it's weird because I spent some time outside of the parks and just going around Orlando. I went to the Titanic experience down there and a couple different restaurants and an outlet mall because, I just have to hit everything we already have here. And what's weird is it feels like Niagara Falls, Canada. Like portions of Orlando with all their touristy stuff feels very much like Clifton Hill in Canada.
That's interesting.
And it was weird because I wasn't the only person to notice. My mother looked right here, just looked. My mother hasn't been up over to Canada in a couple of years, but she knows Clifton. Everyone knows Clifton Hill if you're around here. And she looked at it, she's like, this looks like Canada. And I'm like, it does. And random indoor water parks and mini golf and at every corner is a different discount souvenir shop, and there's everything's labeled Orlando. And it even comes in red. It comes in Canadian red. It's perfect.
Hey, it works great for me. I love it.
But it was really cool. It's fun to be down there, see a change of pace, but a lot of people, I'm not used to that many people. I'm used to that many people on some aspects, but it's been a while since I've been in that kind of crowd with that many people and that many tourists. And it really was interesting because what we're seeing now is tourism is back. It's very much back, and this year is going to be it. And that's not isolated just to Orlando. People are coming to Niagara Falls, and that is very obvious. All signs are indicating that this season is barreling towards us as quickly as it possibly can. It is not waiting for an official spring date. It is here.
Well, that's something we'll talk about later on, is why the rush. It seems that some of the attractions and activities are looking to open because people want them.
That's it.
People are traveling now. Today I had a couple this morning who come from Pennsylvania. They're both college seniors. They're getting married and they came up on spring break. This afternoon I had a couple from the couple who she's working at the Buffalo Home Show, and she's from South Carolina, and as is he, and just two lovely couples. In fact, we overlapped the tours so that they met and got along famously. But yeah, you've got these two couples. We had 4 people from India this morning. People are traveling from everywhere. We've been seeing a lot of Europeans, a lot of people from various parts of Asia. Right now, China hasn't been back traveling as a national group. We haven't seen that, but I think COVID's really had a grip there on their international travel. But you're right. I mean, we're seeing this summer, I think we're going to be busier than ever.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is going to be the season.
'Tis the season to be tourist. There you go. But we're going to cut to a commercial here in a moment, and for our good friends at Victorienberg Winery. And if you get a chance if you haven't watched this, it was shot with handheld cameras. So I'm being a producer here and saying, it wasn't planned to be a commercial. But this place is really unique and really beautiful. So enjoy this for a moment. We'll be right back with the happenings in Niagara Falls. On the shoreline of Lake Ontario, just east of Wilson, New York, you'll find a sweet spot that combines old world charm with new world vintages. From the rustic elegance of their grounds to the warmth and enchantment of their tasting room, you'll feel a special welcome to Victorienberg Wine Estate, owned and operated by Victoria and Dan Hogue. Award-winning wine is available for tasting, or for a true adventure of pairing, you can savor the wide variety of award-winning chocolate truffles and their suggested wine partners. From the superb traditional wines to specialty vintages infused with chocolate or other delights, there's something for every palate. No setting on the wine trail can match this marriage of vintage and delicacy. Our tasting room is open daily, Sunday through Friday from noon until 5 and Saturday from 11 to 6. Acres of vineyards, patios, rhythmic fountains, and our rose garden entice you to stroll the grounds after tasting our award-winning wines. Find us at 4402 East Lake Road in Wilson, New York, or online at www.victorianburg.com. Oh, I love that place.
Absolutely wonderful.
It's funny, you know, in it we say award-winning, and I've been thinking about that. What does it mean to be award-winning? I guess you have to win awards, right? We said the truffles were award-winning. And I was thinking about that. I've been in tourism close to 40 years in various aspects. I've won awards, but I won an award from Quebec Tourism for a program I designed for people. But there's a lot of people who use award-winning. And I often wonder, well, put up your awards. What are they? At the wineries, you see them because they often put the medals they win at wine competitions on the bottles and display.
Yes.
But I don't know, like they win awards from TripAdvisor and things like that. For, you know, our good friends at 5-Star Niagara Falls Tours won a badge of excellence for their their Maid of the Mist tour. And that's kind of interesting because Maid of the Mist, of course, is the operation on the American side with the boats. And they're telling us they're going to be back for somewhere in mid-April, possibly the 7th. You know, a lot can happen between now and then, so we'll be cautious. But today, we're going to show you a picture from Niagara Falls. And this is the dock of the Hornblower over in Canada. And the Hornblower they've launched their first boat into the water. That's on the Canadian side. And they put out part of their temporary dock or their seasonal dock. So here's another shot of the actual boat. This is what alerted me to take the picture, is that's the Hornblower boat operating from the Canadian side, passing under a rainbow. Sounds like a story, doesn't it? Yes. And he passed under a rainbow. But it was exciting to see, seeing the boats out there, but you said there's no ice on Lake Erie.
Yes, so from all indicators so a lot of this is actually based off of the Power Authority and the ice boom that goes across Lake Erie. As soon as they can pull the ice boom away, the boats are allowed to operate with passengers. There's no ice buildup on Lake Erie at the moment. There hasn't been for most of the season, with the exception of the very severe winter storms that we had in November and December.
Right.
And once again in, what was it, a couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
That other one. There has not been a lot of sustained freezing temperatures, and Lake Erie's water temperature never really got low enough to have that large ice cover.
Right.
Where usually this time of year what you start seeing ice flows. So you see large chunks of ice moving down the river. If you head over and you look at anywhere along the Niagara River, like North Tonawanda, Buffalo, New York, any of that, there's no ice. There's no, it is clear as day.
Well, let's be clear. In North Tonawanda, there is now you. You've moved there.
Not necessarily. Oh, I'm splitting I am splitting my, oh, yes. So this
Never give Julian these pictures. I
didn't give Julian this picture.
Right.
This is all you, Peter.
Nice job, Julian.
Monster.
Look at
yes,
that.
look at that. So let's do a before and after there. This is.
Hey, moron!
Yeah, that feels it.
Yeah.
So
okay.
this was my shaggy nightmare look from a couple weeks ago, right before heading to Florida.
And cut back to us there,
yes,
Julian.
cut back to me so we could see. I got a haircut. I'm slightly more. I'm more presentable. I decided. Thank you. 90-degree heat was going to be excessive in poor Florida, so we sheared off a bit. But yes, as we're exploring more of Niagara Falls and Greater Niagara, North Tonawanda is one of the neighborhoods of Niagara Falls. So there was an old marketing campaign. It's still somewhat active, but not really. From Destination Niagara. It was Niagara USA, now it's Niagara Falls USA, and they talk about the 5 neighborhoods of Niagara. And if you ask someone from the city of Niagara Falls what the 5 neighborhoods of Niagara is, they're gonna be like, well, there's Pine Avenue, there's LaSalle, there's the North End, and they're like, no, the 5 neighborhoods are Lewiston, Niagara Falls, North Tonawanda, Wheatfield, and you're like, and Youngstown, and you're like, no, I'm sure all those communities are very, very happy to hear that they are part of the municipality that is Niagara Falls, New York. They're not. Heads up, they have separate governments, and they all run differently. And it is kind of interesting to see how they interrelate with Niagara Falls. They are all part of Niagara County,
Right.
which means they're all part of the county government, and they are part of the Niagara Falls National Heritage Area. They're also part of the Buffalo Niagara Greenway, the Buffalo Niagara Riverway, the Buffalo Niagara Falls Metropolitan Region of the Census. So it all ties back together. They're all covered pretty much by the same. Oddly enough, yes, they are now covered again by the same congressional districts. For a while, they weren't.
Right.
Like most, and not all of it, like parts of the northern part of Niagara County end up back in Rochester again. It's very interesting. If you ever look up how they gerrymander maps, it is, for congressional coverage, is very weird, because you'll see like there's just this little sliver sometimes to connect, because they have to touch. They all have to connect. So they'll take like, this street here belongs to this district. That street over there we don't care about. But it's a lot of fun. These are the things you learn. My minor was in political science, so
yes.
I had to study all of this, so I get to know.
I've always admired that about you, is that when we talk about things like the growth of the city, the history of the city, or the region, you're able to juxtaposition yourself between the factual stuff, like right out of the census, over to the more anecdotal stuff that's part of history. And you do have that combination of knowledges that really blends well together.
Well, thank you, and that is part of why we started doing the show, is to be able to share these kinds of interesting, quirky facts. And sometimes they're not even facts, they're facts that are somewhat connected to Niagara Falls, but sometimes they're just things that are interesting to know.
Right.
I always found that like the more you know about these things, the more of an educated conversation you could have with people, and the more you can understand how your community operates, whether it's here in Niagara or it's anywhere else basically in the United States. They all run very similarly. Our government is all sort of top down from, and it's weird because it's so layer caked and people don't realize that. And we had an election a year or two ago. That's why I always say, and people will be like, well, what election are you voting in? I'm like, well, vote in all of them, but pay attention to your local elections, because you have a lot of power in local elections. And one of the previous elections came down to 2 votes. And
that's right.
It was a county legislature election for one of
Kennedy and Chris Boccio.
Chris Boccio.
Yeah.
And it came down, it like swung back and forth to 2 to 4 votes determined it. And what's interesting is that election, because that was a special election that happened, I think it was last year or 2 years ago. That election is up for grabs this year. And there are people running already. Chris Boccio is running for re-election. He's seeking his first full term. Galen Bailey.
Oh yeah.
Is he's
Seaside Rentals.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he's you have Sightsee Rentals. He was chair of the Tourism Advisory Board in its heyday last year when I was secretary. He's actually chair currently of the Downtown Niagara Falls Business Association, which, this is exciting news. They've rewritten the constitution of the DNFBA, so now all businesses within the city of Niagara Falls can join. It's not just downtown businesses.
Right.
They're trying to form it into just a full business association for the entire city, which was something that was being talked about in the Tourism Advisory Board last year. We were looking to see if there was going to be a new board made or something to do that, because in the city there was a lot of separate sort of organizations. They were a little bit somewhat disconnected. There was Downtown Niagara Falls Business Association, Pine Avenue Redevelopment. There were some here in LaSalle. There was a lot of different organizations. And now sort of the aim is, why don't we put them all together so we can have one voice? And these are just very exciting developments here in Niagara Falls. In addition to actual development here in Niagara Falls, John B. Daly's just looking nice and polished, and Niagara Street's almost done, and like the roads are getting ready for tourists.
It seems like every day, and I'm out doing tours every day, it seems like every day I see a new sign up. I saw one on the Robert Moses for information and things like that. And just, I'm noticing what you said right when we started the show in November, was how the signage is getting better here.
Yes.
And I'm seeing that on a daily basis.
Well, they're working hard on information. They've realized, and they've done surveys. They've done surveys of tourists. They've done surveys of locals. They've asked businesses. And the number one issue a lot of them always had was wayfinding was difficult in Niagara Falls, and information was lacking in Niagara Falls. So they're really putting this extra focus. And it wasn't that the information booths weren't there, and it wasn't that nothing was here. The signage wasn't here. You know, we built it all and then didn't put a sign up to say, hey, we're here. So that's what they've been working on, is they've really started putting the money into the infrastructure of wayfinding, which is something they had been working on for well over a decade now. I remember earlier on they were going to try to create an app that had specific wayfinding capabilities and stuff, and that's why they started adding free Wi-Fi all around downtown. And that free Wi-Fi is still here downtown in downtown Niagara Falls, USA. There is free Wi-Fi. There's free Wi-Fi in the park. There's free Wi-Fi.
Actually, today I bumped into an archaeologist. They're digging in around Goat Island, around Three Sisters today, and they were putting in the wires, the underground cables for the Wi-Fi. And this archaeologist was there, and it was fascinating. I didn't get a chance to talk to him very long. But he monitors anytime they do a dig on the island or within the state park, because there are numerous burial grounds and other sites of that should be protected. And yeah, I didn't realize that they were upgrading the Wi-Fi today, and that they take very careful measures to ensure that if anything that represents our native heritage, not just the Seneca who were here, but before that the Neutrals and early visitors to the area. So they take a lot to protect that. I learned that today because they were supervising the Wi-Fi installation.
A lot of things in Niagara Falls State Park, people ask, they'll be like, why does it take so long for things, kind of like why is the visitor center? The visitor center is taking a while to complete. And it really is, because there is so many details and specific actions that need to be performed in a very specific way. Anytime you're touching, because it is state parkland, it is technically, it is a form of protected land. So they have to follow all these very specific rules. It's not like you're just going up the street. I mean, even if you're digging in a municipality, there's a bunch of rules you need to follow. Code enforcement is strong. Niagara Falls has some of the most intense kind of code regulations when it comes to developing anywhere we are. Hence, we were talking about that our very first episode, why Niagara Falls, Canada has all the tall buildings. Niagara Falls, New York has height limitations, and it's like a sliding scale. The closer you get to the falls, the shorter your building has to be. And these are things that had been put in place, and it was put in place to keep the natural wonder of the falls going, so it didn't turn into what it was before the formation of Niagara Falls State Park, back when it was a bunch of factories built right along the edge and all of that, and pollution galore. And
isn't it funny? We were talking, you just brought up the point that why it takes so long for things at the state park, and there's also a feeling of like, why the rush? We saw Hornblower. I call them Hornblower. They are Niagara City Cruises.
Niagara City Cruises now.
Right, and that's the Canadian version of Made of the Mist, and they were the ones that we showed the photos of. And it's in the water. That's a big deal. The tour guides that I know, I sent the picture to, and they're all excited, guessing like, are they about to start? I'm not sure they're about to start, but they're making progress. But it does feel like there's this rush to put things in place. And there's a simple answer to that, is that, yeah, people are still coming here, aren't they? You were saying that earlier in the show. And people are still, like, they're coming in winter. I mean, I've done tours every day for the last 7 days, and at least one per day, but sometimes 2 and even 3. And people, like, they want these attractions in place, like Made of the Mist, which is an icon. When you go to the falls, you want to ride that. And as you said, in 30-degree weather, well, that could be quite the ride, but people want it. And that's why on one hand, you've got everybody wants things in a hurry. On the other, you've got so many protocols to follow, which include things like heritage protection and the city ordinances, etc. And the environment has to be protected as well.
And that's it. And when you look at Niagara Falls, and that's where businesses in Niagara Falls take their lead from, oddly enough, your main, your e-ticket attractions is what we call. The Cave of the Winds, the Made of the Mist on the American side, and over on the Canadian side, it's Journey Behind the Falls and the Niagara City Cruises, and now the tunnel
Right.
over at the power plant. These are your main attractions on both sides of the border, and the businesses will they set their timetables based on the operation of those other businesses. So when Cave of the Winds starts building their deck, Cave of the Winds is open year-round as a winter experience, but when the red wooden deck starts getting built, that's when the businesses downtown know, okay, time to start getting ready.
Gear up.
It's real season.
Actually, that's starting.
That's it. And when the boats go in the water, you see the Canadian boat in the water, and then once the Maid of the Mist gets in the water, it tells these businesses, okay, the tourism season's about to start. And it's weird because the tourism season never left, but there was a lull, especially in January, where it was very odd, and there were people talking about, I overheard people saying, there's nothing open in Niagara Falls. And I went down there, and, I went to go get a sandwich, and, nothing. The Hard Rock Cafe was the only thing open, and I'm like, uh-oh. I'm like, no food courts were open, nothing was open, and I went, okay, we might have missed and it's weird because I spoke with one of the businesses downtown. I went in one, and I said, why isn't this open? One of the food sections wasn't open, and they said, it costs too much to keep it open. Even though I'm like, well, it's very busy right now. You really could have used having this open. And they said, yes, but you'll go to tomorrow, and we don't know. It might be busy, or there might be no one here. And if there's no one here, that's a lot of money, because especially if it's food service, you have to pay to stock the food, you have to pay for your staff, you have to pay the cooks, you have to pay all of this, you have to pay for the heat, you have to pay for the lights, you have to pay for all of these things. Gas on these ovens are not cheap right now. And that's it. You have to pay for all of this, and it would go to waste if the people aren't here.
True.
What is weird this season, which I'm hoping will continue into next season and going forward, is it never dropped off the way it usually does. Even the low numbers were significantly higher than usual this season. There has always been people in Niagara Falls. In previous years, you knew, you hit January and it was down. Save for maybe a couple of kids' hockey tournaments, there was not a steady flow of tourists. There's a pretty steady flow of tourists this season, which means one of two things is going to happen. Either one, it's just spread itself over the entire year, which will be interesting, or people are what I saw in Orlando and what we're kind of seeing and all the numbers are pointing to, it is going to be an insanely busy season. So if you want to come to Niagara Falls, it is just my pro tip as a person who works at Niagara Falls, and Peter would probably agree with me, please come here before July.
Yeah.
Before July or after Labor Day. So September, October, and even September, October are going to be busy. Memorial Day is busy, but there's these lull periods in May and then early June where it's going to be busy, but it's not going to be the crazy busy where you're getting sellout situations and you're getting, very long wait times and you're getting, the heavy traffic that we experience, because that is very common in July, and people come in July and they ask us, why is it so busy here? I go, it's been like this since the dawn of time. July and August are the busiest months for Niagara Falls.
Kids are out of school, families travel, and people are off work.
And they always come on a weekend. They always we're going to come on a Saturday. And it's well, kids are off school the entire summer. You picked a Saturday. And sometimes it's because, they're working a Monday through Friday, and sometimes it's just because they're projecting it based on, things are open on Saturdays.
Right.
And it's but during the summer, things are open every single day. So I always recommend come in the shoulder season, May or June, or September, October. A weekday, you will save money on hotel bookings if you come on a weekday.
Sure.
There will be usually less of a wait time for your main attractions on a weekday. Your flights are going to be cheaper if you're flying. Gas is, oddly enough, usually cheaper because the gas prices fluctuate.
Yeah, they go up for the weekend.
They go up for the weekend. So it's cheaper to travel during the week. If you can you can get the time off, use your vacation days to come during a week in a shoulder season. Some schools I know schools that let out in June. Do it. I had perfect attendance, so I'm not advocating pulling your kids out of school and bringing them on vacation. My mother was very upset. I would not let her drag me I would not. I'm nope. She's well, don't you want to go to Disney? I'm not if it's a school day. I was a very good kid.
Well, let's we will interview your teachers one day. That would be a fun thing to do. Find some of your teachers. And by the way, you were right on something, that they're still aiming for Memorial Day to have the new visitor center open. Talking to a staff member there, one of the workers who I've encountered many times, and so they're still aiming for that. That's good. And I mean, there's a lot still happening. There's a lot in the planning that's about to unfold in Niagara Falls. There are new restaurants opening and a new hotel about to open, and just it seems like there's a constant growth that we're seeing to meet the demand. And we're hopeful that now things will grow in terms of activities, things to do in addition to eat. A lot of people complain that there's not a lot to do on our side. So the other thing I was going to mention about the person of Niagara this week is a gentleman, Jay Cochran. But did you have anything first?
No.
All
We're
right.
good.
All right. Yeah, we don't want to go too far over today. Because, like, if we get, like, as a Canadian, to tell you, if we go on Canadian time, we're only like 78% of American time, you know. And this weekend we turn the clocks back.
Forward.
Forward, right. We lose
I lose the hour of sleep.
Yes, the
That's
fall
what
I like.
That's what I need this week, to lose another hour of sleep.
Oh, no. That'll be the lead next week, you know, time.
Time is a social construct.
I remember when they introduced the change to the daylight savings times dates back around 2004, 2005 it was announced. And we had President George W. Bush at the time, and on the radio station out of Canada, that's right, they said that George Bush had just signed the authorization to move this forward and change the dates to be, I think, later in October or November and then earlier in March or something. And the DJ on the radio said, and President Bush was heard to say, America is winning the war on time. No, I don't know, war on everything. But, okay, back to the person of Niagara. Wanted to talk about a gentleman today named Jay Cochran. Gentleman I had the pleasure of working with back in 1998. Now, there's Jay up in the top of the Skylon Tower in the blue suit, of course. And he was, in 2001, he became the first person in over 100 years to do a skywalk at Niagara Falls. Now, in 2012, Nick Wallenda did his walk, and his was the first ever across a waterfall. But before that, Jay Cochran had walked on, he set records, like multiple records for skywalking. And if you don't know, the skywalking is subtly different from tightrope walking and other things. And hang on one second, let me just get this. I got this. We get messages and we're still kind of working on it. So he skywalked. It was what was called the Great China Skywalk in the Qutang Gorge in China, and he was it was a 639 meter long or 2,098 foot walk over the Yangtze River. So this man had been very accomplished. I know that in his history from meeting him, he had fallen when he was much younger, in the 60s, I think, or 70s, and broken almost every bone in his body at the one time in Toronto. And so while he was recovering, he studied engineering, and he was able to resume doing skywalking. And he was, as I said, the first person to do a skywalk in Niagara in 2001, and he did it between the Skylon Tower and the nearby, not Embassy Suites, Hilton Hotel. And in 2012, when Nick Wallenda asked about walking over the falls, Jay Cochran asked the same group, the Niagara Parks Commission and Niagara State Parks, could he walk to the U.S.? Well, Wallenda was walking to Canada, and we would have two walkers, but they wouldn't allow it. It wasn't, I forget the reason, but it was legit. It wasn't something political. But in 2012, Nick Wallenda kind of woke up the world to the history of skywalking or tightrope walking at Niagara Falls. But then that summer, from June 23rd, that's 11 days after the Wallenda walk, from June 23rd till Labor Day, he walked between the Skylon Tower that you see there, and he walked across to to the Hilton every night, and he set a record there for doing 11.81 miles cumulative, walking 1,300 feet between the two hotels, and about 520 feet in the air.
Wow.
So that was Jay Cochran. He was a passionate, fun-loving individual. Everything he did was for a Tender Mercies, I believe, was the charity. And he raised money for children's charities his whole life. And back in 2012, he only missed 5 nights where he couldn't walk between the Skylon and the Hilton. So that's my person of Niagara. He passed away, sadly, several years ago from cancer, but he was very interesting. He was trying to walk across Niagara Falls back in the late 90s and trying to get permission for what eventually they extended to Nicolenda. And it was very sad that we couldn't see them both at once, I think.
Yeah, that would have been really cool. These are the kinds of interesting stories, because we know about Nicolenda. You know, everyone sort of knows about that. That was a national televised event.
Yeah.
You know, that was, in fact, we're commemorating that. There's going to be a aerial sculpture over Old Falls Street that they're working on that's supposed to be installed, I think, sometime either this year or next year. They're working it out. And Peter was pointing out that over in the train terminal there is a mannequin of Nicolenda.
Doing his walk. His walk. He's in the red jacket.
Which is, and these are the kind of weird things. Obviously, you turn a corner in Niagara Falls, and there's a wax figure of Nicolenda in a train terminal.
But that one's scary. I mean, that one doesn't quite grasp the intensity of Nicolenda.
It has a different kind of intensity to it.
Yeah, something more along the lines of constipation. I don't know. Not my favorite thing, but that's another thing that we need here is more recognition of just everything that made this place.
Yes.
You know, I remember I worked at the state parks as one of the characters of history, and I played the owner of the lands. But I worked with some really fun people. One who played Annie Taylor, and one first person over the falls in a barrel. One who played Nikola Tesla. One who played not Thomas Edison, pardon me, Father Hennepin. We also had Maria Spelterina. It's actually Spelterina, but they call her Maria Spelterini, the first woman to tightrope across the gorge. So just this great living history. And when there were long lineups at the various attractions, we just walk up and down the lineups and entertain the people while they were waiting. And going back to what you said, waiting is part of life.
Yes.
You know, Disney have made a science out of trying to control waiting time. But when something that can physically hold 500 people draws 10,000 people, you can't play with the math. There's no way around the math on that.
Well, there isn't, and there is. And this is one of the things that you experience if you go to Universal, you go to Disney, which is that the science of waiting is, and now they're trying to go even further. They're trying to make things like weird timed reservation. You know, it's like waiting for a restaurant where they try to, you know, entertain you. But there is entertainment in the line. What you were doing, you know, the historical Niagara people were doing, you entertain the line. And that makes it so, and even when you're waiting in line in Niagara Falls, it's not like you're waiting in line and it's this horrible dungeon of doom, and other than the fact that it can get a little bit hot, and I always warn people that if it is hot out, it is hotter there. So, you know, stay hydrated. You're in nature, you know, it's not like you're in this horrible, you know, stuck out in a parking lot somewhere, you know, waiting on tarmac. You're waiting in grass, you're waiting in nature. You know, depending, you're either going to be looking at the gorge, you're looking at trees, you're looking at the falls, you know, there's different points depending on which attraction. Cave of the Winds has the pavilion. Over at the Maid in the Mist, you're on the observation tower. So there is things to do as you wait. Unless it's 4th of July, in which you're just a very long wait no matter what attraction you're doing. Cave of the Winds does do time ticketing. Even then, you still have to wait either for your time or once you have your time processing through, you have to wait for elevators, you have to wait to come back up. With any travel, waiting is part of traveling.
Yeah.
Like that is just sort of how it is. But what can work is more things like, you know, what your group did. There's musicians that like to come and they'll wait near the lines.
Yeah, buskers they call them. Yeah,
you know, and that's I find them to be entertaining. They're a you know, depending on which ones they are. Some of them less so than others. Each one has different entertainment value. Some of them just have absolutely beautiful music. There's been violence out. There's people with handpans.
Yeah,
and
those are beautiful.
You know, there's one guy, you know, he sometimes brings a keyboard, sometimes he brings a guitar. And then there's other ones whose entertainment value is just who they are. And I'm just going to say Diamond Dave.
Yep,
Diamond Dave.
Dancing Diamond Dave.
The world famous Diamond Dave. Which, if you ever come to Niagara Falls, pretty much any day of the year, and you head over near the Niagara Falls Observation Tower at the foot of the admissions to Made in the Mist, the Observation Tower, and now would basically be the exit of the visitor center down at the base there once it's opened back up, you will run into the Tambourine Man, as they call him, which is the world famous Diamond Dave. And he'll be banging around on his tambourine, sometimes wearing a leather jacket, sometimes wearing a t-shirt with the sleeves ripped off of it. And he is a riot. And if you ever have a conversation with him,
soul.
He is a wonderful human being. And that being said, when you're down in the park, I have heard, sometimes I don't notice that he's there because I don't hear the tambourine anymore. Because if you're working anywhere in proximity to him, first time they go, he does this all day, doesn't he? I'm like, you stop noticing. Like, you stop noticing the tambourine. You tune out the tambourine. And it's funny because there's just a lot of noise down there.
Yep.
Even with your buskers, no matter what they're playing. Fun fact, they're not allowed to have amps or speakers because there is a volume level control. You can't have volume above a certain level in Niagara Falls State Park. That is regulated, and the rangers will come and politely tell you, stop it.
Right.
You can, technically, it's sort of a gray area performing music because as long as you're not asking for money, it's technically a public performance, but it's sort of a gray area, and they allow it to an extent as long as it's not excessive. But it's hard to compete with the sound of the helicopters overhead, the roar of the falls, just a crowd noise of people. So it's funny because you'll hear this music, but you'll only hear it like within 10 feet of where they are. Like, you have to be kind of near them, and all of a sudden you'll be walking by and you'll hear it. And I'll have moments where I'll just be like, it's a little bit of a quieter day, and they're out, and you hear the music, and you smell like popcorn, lemonade, the smell of Canada, the post plant and maple syrup come wafting over into Niagara Falls, USA. And it's just this moment of you're like, oh, this is a really nice vacation. I'm like, oh, wait, I'm working. Wait, I'm on the clock. Let's go back. And that's it. These are the fun things about Niagara Falls. These are the weird sort of odd things that you take for granted if you work here or live here. If you've been here a million times, you just sort of put it in the back of your mind and you don't notice it. And a lot of tourists don't notice it immediately because tourists are, a lot of times, they're focused on the attraction, the falls. We're here to see the falls. I'll watch them make a beeline straight for the falls. My favorite question is, where's the falls? We're standing 10 feet from the waterfall. They stop and ask me, where is it? And I go, look, lift up your head. Look straight ahead, and they go, oh, there it is. I'm like, yeah, you thought it was going to be farther away.
Can't see the forest for the trees.
Exactly.
Right?
But, they have a lot of tourists, and I have this issue a lot of times when I travel where you're on a mission. You want to hit all of these things, and this is what you have to do because this is the itinerary, and we're sticking to the plan. And you can miss a lot of fun things if you're just hyper-focused on, okay, we have to go here, and now we go here, and then we go here. And a lot of, my favorite days on vacation are the ones where I have no itinerary. Like, I've done what I need to do, and now we're just kind of doing whatever we feel like.
Go with the breeze.
You just see, and every time you go somewhere, you see a little bit more of something. So I'm always finding something new in Niagara Falls. And weird facts that someone will tell me, well, you know this. And I'm like, I did not know that. It's like, how did I not know that? And there's some of them are, how did I not know that? How long have I been here? My entire life.
Exactly. Good one. It really is an interesting soundscape down there. You've got the roar of the falls. You've got the sounds of people. And like you say, you can walk past a guitarist and you'll hear a few seconds of Tom Petty. And you'll be in line for the Maid of the Mist, and you'll hear this beautiful pan. Forget what the guy was playing. It's a different kind of instrument, or a didgeridoo or something like that.
Yeah, there is a guy that has a didgeridoo that plays a didgeridoo, and then there's the saxophone player. There's this kid, and he's been there like 2 years in a row now. and he plays the saxophone. Like, and like he'll just come out, and he's young. He's younger than me.
I know
he's
you're
a kid.
About. Yeah.
And it's funny because the first year he was there, I'd be like, okay, this is enough, because he only knew like 3 songs, and he'd play them on a loop for like 4 hours, and you'd be like, oh kid, you got to learn a new song. He switched up his variety a little bit more, so now it's, you get more songs.
Growing.
And then there's the other guy there who usually has his guitar or his keyboard, and he has a little laminated sheet, and he says, I'm a human jukebox. Pick any of these songs, and I'll play, here's your song recommendation.
I think I sang with him last summer. I jammed with him and someone else who was down there.
He's a lot of fun. I actually went to a dueling piano bar when I was in Orlando, and they were traveling musicians. One was from Omaha, and the other one, I think, was from Boston. And they came and they play music, and they 2 pianos set right against each other.
Oh, that's
and I sat
cool.
there, and it was I can't remember the restaurant. It was down. It's right in Universal City Walk. Pat O'Brien's. It was Pat O'Brien's. And it's really fun. Sat there and ate nachos and a ridiculously massive po' boy and like listened to piano music, and it was a lot. And those is kind of fun because they're traveling local musicians, so they're kind of just the same as the ones you're running into in Niagara Falls. Some of these musicians will travel different venues, and there's a lot of live music in Niagara Falls between the 3rd Street concert series, which I'm pretty sure, from what I've heard, is coming back this year, except bigger. Porch Fest,
Yes, we're going to have Mary on soon about that.
Yes, and then Town of Niagara does their Monday Music Mania series.
Yes.
There's concerts at Gretwick and North Tonawanda. There's a lot of live music, pretty much any bar you go to.
And these are all accessible to visitors to the region.
That's it.
Even if it's a very short Uber ride, or you can take your own car up there.
Sometimes you could hop on the Discover Niagara shuttle. A lot of these are connected to the shuttle, and that shuttle runs through most of the season. So, and that's free. So you could hop on the shuttle. That now goes all the way out to Lockport, which is really cool. They just drained one of the locks. They're doing maintenance on, I think it's either Lock 38 or one of the locks, and they dry. So it's been drained dry because they're doing maintenance on it, which they do once every 10 years.
Right.
And that was I saw that photo in the Niagara Gazette.
That's cool.
And that's and these are the interesting kind of things that happen. It's like, oh, they drained the lock? Let's go take a look at that. I'm still waiting for them to turn off the falls, but...
Something that 2 of our good friends, David from Niagara Regional Tours and Brett from 5 Star Niagara Tours, have been teaching their staff is that as tour guides, we need to be more active when people are not active. When they're in line for Maid of the Mist, it's a golden time to spend, like you just hit the nail on the head, is that when you're down on that lineup to get on the boat, you can see so many things that you can talk about and illustrate and bring to life, and you've got the time to do it. And there's a lot of different approaches that different guides have. I know there's some guides that will go on the boat with them. Now, we don't do that because somebody asked me about it last summer, and when you take an attraction like Maid of the Mist or Cave of the Winds, they have their own delivery system for the information and the experience. And to get on is to compete with that. I liken it to getting into a gift shop and telling my guests what to buy. When you're getting on Maid of the Mist, they have a good narrative, they have a solid experience, and part of it is the experience of letting yourself decide what you want to ask about. And then we're there afterwards to answer questions. What was that? What is this? But yeah, I think we can do more in the tourist industry, and we hope that guides will do more, that when you are in line, stay with your guests and have fun.
That's it. Even if you're not a tour guide, if you're a fun person, you want to spend an afternoon, come down to Niagara Falls and entertain people, go right ahead. I would enjoy it. We've had some interesting people come to Niagara Falls State Park. There was a furry invasion in October. And there is nothing weirder than 92 degrees. And it was weird because October, but it's unusually warm. It's like 87 degrees in October. We had a warm October.
Madman. You're a madman.
Exactly. And you're in those fursuits, and those poor people. Man. It was boiling hot. It was I'm like, oh.
Well, we got some great shows coming up. Before we go to our closing video, we'll I know that on March 29th, and what is that? That's 3 weeks from now. We're going to be at the Herschel Carousel Museum.
Yes, we are.
and we get to be there with Ian Sapella, their executive director, and we're going to spend some time with him and some of his staff there, and we're going to do a show live from the museum. And I think we're giving away some tickets, some passes that night, etc. So hopefully you'll start calling in as you have ideas or experiences here. And that's absolutely, fine for now. We haven't really interacted with a lot of people, but this is designed that we hope that people who are looking to come to Niagara Falls or have been here will interact with us. And I don't know. Look at one of the previous weeks.
Go to February.
Julian? Yeah. So poor Julian, we just sent him a message
February
to do
1st.
something, and there we go. And he's getting something ready for us. So we're really blessed. Julian does really good work back there, and I know he enjoys the sound effects. And we did want to. All right, Julian's a jerk. All right. Not at all. Okay, but before we get Rosie the Riveter to lead us in our little dance at the end video, I did want to mention that there's a place across the street, and Julian is our test pilot when it comes to food. And Julian, why don't you tell us what the Horny Hog Barbecue tasted like? How was it?
It was good.
I love that. Hey, how was that?
It was good. But that's it. That's how I know it's good. If you don't have any commentary, we don't need puffery on it. We don't need to be like, "That was the greatest food I've ever had in my life," and it was good. That is the most I've ever heard that boy talk.
And he really enjoyed it. He's had it for the last couple of weeks. So it's called the Horny Hog Barbecue. It's here on Buffalo Avenue. It could be 8706. I don't know their exact address, but it's right across from us, and we're 8705. So Buffalo Avenue, and right in the heart of LaSalle, and their food is really outstanding.
And they are running a little bit of a special gimmick right now that I saw on their Facebook page. If they had these cutouts of like a pig and a cow, and you stick your head through it, and if you take a photo for social media and share it on your social media page while you're there, you get 10% off.
Oh, that's a good one.
Which is great. So we might just have to do that.
I think so, yeah. Do they have a weasel? Because I'd like to do that. No. But,
Madman. You're a madman.
That's right, I am. So yeah, that's one of our neighbors here. We wanted to say, give them a shout out tonight. And we are working with the LaSalle Business Association now to try and put together a promo for this region. There's a lot going on. And discover your neighbors. And I learned from doing tourism that people, when they ask for food recommendations, they're not asking for Applebee's or Rainforest Cafe. And there's nothing wrong with those. They're great experiences. But what they're asking us is what's good local. Where do we eat?
Yes.
So I'd have to say the Horny Hog Barbecue, just outstanding. And then our good friends at the Sunshine Cafe, best breakfast
Sunshine
anywhere.
Cafe.
That's Lisa, I believe, and she's awesome. So we told the Horny Hog that we do the Niagara 9 for barbecue next, but I think they're the only barbecue place in Niagara Falls. I know we've got the Brickyard, but that might be true.
No, I mean, so how are we bracketing Niagara Falls? Are we doing Niagara Falls, or are we doing the neighborhoods of Niagara?
Yeah.
Okay, well then there's a really good one out in Middleport. Which I'm blanking my name out on, it's like M&A or something. I had them. I went to get them after my first COVID shot, and they were closed. And then I went back and got it, and then got a flat tire. So it's usually something happens, and I have to go get it. But they have amazing brisket, like ridiculously good brisket there. There's the Brickyard out in Lewiston, of course. There are more in Niagara Falls. I am too tired to think of barbecue places right now, because I know there are, and I'm sure one of my friends is going to text me and go, "You didn't mention this place." I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. How did I completely dropped the ball on that." But there's just a lot of good food in Niagara.
It's amazing. And with the Niagara 9 that we're looking to launch, and a lot of things we've talked about, we really just kind of floated them out there. But right now, there's there's nothing open to maintain it. I know that our sports arm of Vox Sports is actually going to be doing the Niagara Power this year, so we're going to be running our program ads on their platform, because there's going to be a lot of people coming to Niagara Falls to see relatives play. When the various cities in New York State come out, there will be people from whatever the visiting team is. It could be Jamestown or Batavia, and they'll come here. And we want to make sure they know everything there is to do and all the great local flavors.
Absolutely.
Well, what do you say? You got some final words, thoughts, ideas, dreams, goals, ambitions, or fears? Okay. No, that's a simple answer.
I plead the fifth.
I'm a Canadian. We don't have the fifth. I love that in Canada.
Madman. You're a madman.
64 sounds on that thing. Anyway, poor Julian. Yes, Julian wants me to make an announcement that he has to work with he has to work with a very limited range of sounds, because we haven't taken the time to put all of his sounds up. So we will get to those. And also, in closing, we will have a visitor next Wednesday to the studio by the name of Wolfie. Is that correct, Julian? Yeah. Oh, thanks for noticing.
Well, love.
All right. So we will have a special visitor in studio, and we will introduce him to you next week. So, and I know we will tell you after this. But you're going to the dogs. All right. Folks, last thoughts from Nico, or are you done?
I suppose. I don't know. No! I think Julian has spoken enough. The people have spoken. It is time to log off. Good night, everyone. Farewell. Go get Dee Dee's. They open this Friday. It's ice cream season.
Ooh. Yeah.